Hello, fellow writers. I'm Lewis. That over there is Tolkien, and you found the Scripturient Society.
Welcome back to your
Welcome.
favorite writing podcast.
Woo.
Woo! Cue the applause.
Anyway.
Screams of fear, terror.
Especially given the topic, but we will get to that.
Absolutely, yeah, for this episode. Well, that over there is Karissa Harlow, aka Lewis, aka Catherine. I did you out of order. Catherine is her scary alter ego who probably delights in the fear that this episode is going to bring into all of our hearts. And I am Ash O'Rourke, aka Tolkien, and I am drinking butterbeer cider right now.
Yes.
Which I thought you would like. It is so good. Caleb brought it back with him, and I was like, I don't know about this because, there's a lot of stuff people say, oh, it's butterbeer flavored. And it's like, is it though? And sometimes I'm like, that's so sweet. It's disgusting. This is delicious. So
yeah.
Cheers.
Oh my gosh. Good stuff. Yeah, the butterbeer in Harry Potter worlds is actually delicious. So
that's what Javi says. And I still haven't been, but Javi's always, every time he tries anything, he's like, it's not like a Harry Potter world. And I'm like, shut up already. Okay.
Right. I've touched the moon. I can't just settle for anything, but some things come close. So
that's funny. I think that this must come close, but I had Javi try it and he was like, it's fine. And I was like, so what is it? If this is just fine, what does the butterbeer Harry Potter world taste like?
It's heavenly.
Heavenly? Wow.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Well, anyways, how's your week been, Lewis?
Good. My bug bites have healed, if anyone was curious.
That's a relief. We've all been concerned.
I know. They left pseudo scars. So I don't know. I think they might have been infected, but there's infected, you're going to die, and there's infected, rub some rubbing alcohol on it and put a Band-Aid over top and you're fine. And this was the second kind. So
well, what a relief.
Whatever
happens. I mean, you're sitting here, so I assume.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm not actively dying. But that's good. Also, in strange news, today is a holiday of my own making. And I don't know if you remember this. I don't know if I've told this story before, but today is Platypus Awareness Day. That's the holiday I made up. Essentially, several years ago, I went off on a tangent on Snapchat and decided that, so the plural is platypodes. That's the plural.
Oh,
yes.
I did not know that.
It's not platypuses and it's not platypi. It's platypodes.
I thought it was platypi. I'm so incorrect. Wow.
I decided for a series of reasons that don't really interconnect, but did to me at the time, that platypodes are actually capable of time travel, and that there are certain organizations in the world that act as a front for time travelers.
This is familiar.
Yes, the pro time travelers have to protect the platypodes from becoming extinct, and the anti-time travelers are trying to cause them to go extinct. Because a couple of years ago, they were considered vulnerable. They're not in danger, but they're vulnerable. And so I'm pretty sure that there are some anti-time traveler people out there that are causing this, and it is my job as the platypus prophet to protect the platypodes.
Oh my God. Well, happy Platypus Awareness Day to everybody.
Yes. So save a platypus and save the world.
Oh my God. Can you tell that you're a writer? I mean, you've got a very elaborate plot going.
I saved these Snapchat videos in which this story unfolded over the course of 2 hours. And it's 25 videos. And it's insane.
I post them one by one on our Instagram.
I kind of want to.
Or maybe on our TikTok.
In the story, maybe. We'll see. But it's crazy. Yeah, so there are all kinds of details about this story. If your name is Christopher Weaver, pretty sure that you're somehow connected. I don't know how yet.
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, I am the platypus prophet. It is my job to protect the platypodes. So help me out, guys.
Yeah, on this day of platypus awareness.
Yes. And by the way, it is October 12th. You guys will not be hearing it on the actual platypus awareness day, but that's okay.
Yeah, because next year you'll be prepared for it.
You'll be prepared. You'll know about it. And really, they need protection all the time because there are anti-time travelers out to get them. And they are just platypodes. They are animals. They don't know what they're doing. So we have to help them.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Well, so I've been celebrating that today.
Oh yeah, have you?
Yes, by revisiting those videos and thinking a lot about time travel because I find it really interesting.
That's adorable. I got my, I guess this is more of a writing thing, so I'll save my full like update, but I got my first rejection for this book.
Ooh.
Well, it's not technically my first, but since they're reread, it's my first. So I was like, you got it, lady. And I just marked her as a rejection. And I went and I submitted to a different agent and her agency because they specifically said I could do that. And I was like, I will. Thank you.
I will. Thank you very much. On my way right now.
Yeah. So I did that and I'm very proud of myself.
Cool.
Oh, and then also I posted a video that I had recorded after bitching a little bit about Upwork, because I don't know if have you ever picked up like freelance work on Upwork?
No, not on Upwork.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyone who freelances on like Upwork and Fiverr knows that like the jobs that are listed in the pay scales vary just insanely. And a lot of people want the whole world for like pennies. And so basically I made this video that was just like, you guys will never guess what this person was asking for. I will tell you briefly, because also maybe the listeners will find it amusing, because apparently currently 1,023 people liked the video, which is insane because this was on my personal profile at Ash and Books on TikTok, which I don't have that many followers. So I have no idea what's going on. There's like 108 comments or something. Like, it's bananas because everyone's mad about working, I guess, for like Upwork clients or whatever. But basically this person had wanted a developmental edit, copy edit, and proofread all to be completed. Those are 3 separate edits within 6 to 7 days for an 80,000 word historical romance novel. And just, would you like to guess what they were willing to pay?
I think I remember it was like, was it 1,000 or was it
$200?
Oh my gosh, that's right.
Yeah,
oh my gosh,
$200. Yeah. So that's insane. And so I just made a video telling that story, and so many people were like, this is insulting. I am furious. And so everyone's just like really mad about freelance rates. And you guys, those are not real freelance rates, by the way. Those are people who want absolutely something for nothing. And it is, and then people are like, this is disrespectful. And I'm like, it is a little bit. But I agree, but
yeah, I can, live and let live and move away from this person.
It was per usual. It was the video where I'm like, I'm not wearing any makeup. I was like, I've never posted these before, but it's just kind of funny, like how insane their offer was. So it's like, I just want someone else to at least one other person to be like, oh, wow, that is crazy. And 1,023 people thus far have been like, wow, that's crazy. And I'm like, I mean, you're right, but I didn't know we all wanted to talk about this. I feel like it's the thing where it's like people love to complain and people like to be negative together. And part of that is good because it's camaraderie. And part of that is I'm like, oh no, am I like feeding into like just negativity reviews? But I had no idea anyone was going to watch this video. And then I did a funny video and it has like 14 likes. And I'm like, you know what? Everyone just wants to be unhappy.
It's the worst. I'm not even going to start. TikTok confuses me and Instagram is disheartening. We are currently stuck at 666 followers.
You guys.
And it'll go up.
Unfollow us.
I know, it'll go up.
Handle that.
And then it comes right back down. And I'm like, okay. And then it'll go down and I'm like, this is better, but not great. And then it'll go back up and I'm like, okay, just like one more. And then it'll go up and I'm like, great. And then it will go back down. And I'm like, who is unfollowing us just to get us back to this number?
That is so upsetting. People did that on Instagram a lot too. They like follow and unfollow. I'm like, what did you think was going to happen?
Yeah.
Did you think I was going to go follow you and then you were going to like unfollow me and I wouldn't notice?
Right.
Like, it's weird. It's a weird game.
It is.
But yeah.
So I please ask someone to come and follow us. It's just for like 6 months until we get solidly out of the 666 range, please.
Yes, please, guys.
I also think you'll enjoy it. It's good writing stuff.
It's enjoyable. I mean, for you guys, it's just a bonus, but for us, please help us.
Please help.
It feels a bit like a curse.
It does. And it just keeps shifting back down or up depending on the direction. And I'm like, I don't like it.
That's frustrating.
It is.
Has anything else happened in your week besides your preparation and celebration of Platypus Day?
No, that takes a lot of emotion out of me. I've been kind of in a funk, like I don't want to read, I don't want to write, I don't want to do much of anything, and I have to like force myself to get up and do things. Which is fine. It's just awful. So I
get that. I've been in a funk this whole week so far where I've just been like not to keep using this word, but kind of just bitchy. And I'm trying really hard not to be, but it's hard because I think my hormones are crazy and I'm tired and Javi's about to go on orders. And every time this morning he goes, wow, we've been sniping at each other a lot, haven't we? And I was like, it happens every time the week before he leaves. We get really snippy with each other. And I think it's because we're both like, have a lot of emotion, but neither of us are like really outwardly emotional people. So instead of like actually processing externally those feelings with each other, we're like, it's just gonna come out some other ways. We just end up getting kind of anxious. And so I've just been like kind of bitchy and like really hard to be around. And I was like, listen, I'm sorry. I know I'm being awful, but I also feel like I can't stop.
I know it's terrible, but I am going to continue.
This is going to keep going. This way. So I'm trying, but then so instead I just like directed my angst somewhere else, which just stressed me out. I was like, I'm going to read my book in bed beside you. Okay. But then I just was like, but I'm also going to complain about the fact that every time I sit down, I forget something and have to get back up. So I still have all the emotion and anger. I just direct it somewhere else. And he's like, please calm down. You're stressing me out. And then I'm like, I'm allowed to be stressed out. And he's like, oh my God. And I'm like, I know. I don't know what's wrong with me.
This is what it's like to be in my head.
Yeah, exactly. So that's pretty much been this week. But and then tomorrow I have to clean the entire house, which is going to be fun because I got behind on it in focusing on editing and book stuff. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I guess that's pretty much been my week. Nice. Do we have book recommendations?
Yes, I think I forgot to mention one last week. So Don't Call the Wolf by Alexandra Ross. It's like a Polish fairy tale situation. I don't think it's a retelling of one in particular, but it's like based on Polish fairy tales. So let me just tell you real fast. I really love Baba Yaga. Do you know who that is?
No, but I know the name. I've never actually looked into that.
Okay, so Baba Yaga, she must be Polish or Eastern European or something. She is a witch who lives in the woods in a little house that has chicken legs, and so it can chase after you. Like
I hate that.
It unplants itself and will chase after you. She also has she eats people, so she has just kettles full of human soup and other her blankets are made out of human skin and all that kind of stuff. It's so creepy. Why do I like her? I don't know. I suspect it goes back that, and also the Sisters Grimm books have her in them, and so I think there's just a part of me
that is a children's book. Good Lord.
Puck finds her to be an inspirational mentor, so that's
wow,
the wide eyes. But anyway, horrifying. I just think she's interesting, and I really like her. She makes an appearance in Don't Call the Wolf, so that's not really even the selling point, but it was for me.
Oh my God, what is it actually about? Is it a retelling or?
I don't think it's of anything specific, but it is about there are these people, I guess, called wolf lords, and they're essentially dragon slayers. And this dragon has settled into this kingdom, and thousands and thousands of knights have gone to try to slay it, and they've all never returned. So even the wolf lords abandon this kingdom, and so everyone leaves. And then it's 17 years later, this one wolf lord decides to go back. He's looking for his brother, not really to slay the dragon. And then there's this girl, but she's also a lynx that lives in the woods that have appeared, and she's the queen. And she's like, I want this dragon gone so that my forest can come back. He's like, I want to find my brother who went after the dragon. So they team up and they go to slay the dragon. So
wow,
there are all these monsters and a little bit of a found family thing going on.
Which you always like.
Yes. So it's fun. It was good.
Interesting.
And the cover is beautiful. It's purple and orange, which I never see, and I really like. So
that makes sense for you. You like bright colors, even some colors that I feel like don't go together. And you're like, yes, this is a color combination for me.
This is it. I'm into this.
That is so funny.
So yeah, I would recommend it, especially if you guys are if you like fairy tale retellings, but you're kind of done with the same old. It has a lot of the same elements, but it goes kind of a different direction because it's more Eastern European as opposed to Western. So
interesting. I think my book rec which is kind of a weird book rec. I think it's also supposed to be not really a fairy tale retelling, but kind of like an original fairy tale that's supposed to feel like a retelling. Yes, it's considered a captivating and utterly original fairy tale according to Goodreads. So this is a book I have not read, so this is not actually a book rec. This is more like something I added to my reading list, and I want verification that this is worthy of being a book rec. It's called Girl Serpent Thorn by Melissa Bachardoust. I don't know how you say her last name, but I'm curious to know, because the cover, I don't know if you can see it on the video. It's got like,
oh yeah,
it's like, there we go.
Bit.
It's got like flowers and a snake and stuff. And actually, I mean, it's a pretty like this generation YA book cover, I feel like. But the color scheme is different. It's like, instead of being like dark and black and gold and stuff, it's white. Like white, and it's got like pastel green leaves and a white snake and like pink what look like carnations, and it just looks really interesting. I think that it's like about a girl who's like poisonous to the touch, and she's like a princess, and it just sounds interesting. So this is not exactly a book rec. It's just like, this is what I just added to my reading list this week. And if anyone knows anything about it, I would love to hear your thoughts, because I really want to buy it.
Yeah. It, the cover kind of looks like a reverse color scheme serpent and dove cover.
Yes, it does, very much, which could be why it caught my eye. And it seems like it has some themes that are not entirely dissimilar to the book that I just rewrote. So I'm also like, is this a book I can list as like similar books? Like when I query it, I need to know. So you guys think that the book is worth reading, please let me know. This is more like me asking for y'all's recommendation of a particular book.
Turning it on you this time.
Yeah, exactly. What do you think, listener? What about our word of the week?
Yeah, this is a word of the week. I'm not really sure if this is common knowledge or not, but it wasn't common knowledge to me. So neophyte, Neophyte. And this is a person who is new to a subject, skill, or belief, a new convert.
Oh, I think I've heard this before. I just always forget it.
I know. I'm like, I know what that is, but I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
I think this is what they were called in Nevernight by J. Kristoff. I think they were called neophytes, and I think that's where I first learned it. But so like, if you have any kind of a book that takes place in like some kind of a school or like a learning institution, which is also known as a school,
a school by any other name.
Yeah. Like in Nevernight, it's kind of like a church, but a dark church where they're learning how to kill people. So something like that.
Definitely be neophytes there. That makes sense.
Yes. So yeah. So like, if there's any kind of apprenticeship going on or like a training thing, neophyte could be a term.
Or if you're new to a cause or something.
Yeah.
Interesting. Neophyte. That's useful, and I feel like contextually easy enough to understand that it's one we could actually use more often.
Yeah. Yeah, the neo part kind of sounds like new, so you can kind of figure it out from context if you use it right.
And fight isn't a lot of words that refer to certain types of people, so neophyte. Interesting. New person. Interesting.
New person to a cause.
Yeah.
Skill or belief. Yeah.
To a cause, skill or belief. Well, should we get into our theme for this episode?
Yeah, so it's about halfway through October, so we're going to talk about NaNoWrimo. Dun, dun, dun. Oh, we went different directions with that.
Yeah, we did. Oh my goodness. You can tell how we each feel. Although what's funny is I think you've probably done it more than I have.
So yes, but also no. I have never actually done pure NaNoWrimo, right? So NaNoWrimo, for those of you who don't know, is National Novel Writing Month, and it's November. And so I looked up like how it started and stuff. So I'm just going to go into my little notes about this. So it began. I have a spiral
notebook too. We met.
It began in 1999. I did not realize it was this old.
What?
I know.
I think that's my sister's birth year.
Oh, that makes sense.
I'm not incorrect, but yeah.
Yeah.
She slid in right under the wire.
Just barely not a 2000s baby.
Yeah, exactly.
So 1999 by a guy named Chris Beatty, with a group of 21 writers in the San Francisco Bay Area. And these are the rules. There are 3 ground rules that technically you have to follow to be participating in NaNoWrimo. One is that it must be a new novel, not something you've previously worked on. So even if you have one chapter, it's technically not a NaNoWrimo. You have to do it within, well, I'll get there. I know. The second rule is that it has to be written by a single person. So you can't tag team it with someone else. It has to be just you. Okay. And the third rule is that it must be completed between like midnight November 1st to midnight November 30th. So you have to write it within that timeline of the month. You can't go over.
See, these rules make sense to me, but the fact that you said there were rules made me immediately go, well, I'm not doing it now.
Yeah. that sounds like something you would do. They're very simple rules and probably things you kind of already knew anyway.
Yeah.
But
very contextual.
Sorry, I need water.
No, you're good.
Yes. But the thing is that I've technically never written anything new before. I have edited and I have gotten through major edits where it feels like a new book at the end of it, but I've never actually done NaNoWrimo where I follow all those rules. I've done the first or the second two. So I've done the second two, but not the first rule. And you would think that I could, because I've already written 3 books this year. And one of them was in like a week. And one of them I think was within about a month. I think I know I started it in June and I finished it before July was over. So I don't know exactly where that timeline plays out, but I know I can do it. But there's something about the fact that everyone else is doing it too that makes it really hard for me to commit to it.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I'm gonna try it this year. I try it every year. So we'll see. I'm thinking I'm gonna do my Lord of the Flies remix book too. But I don't know. I'm still kind of brainstorming if there's something else I want to do, if like a standalone to be easier, because then you don't have to worry about books that came before or books that are coming after. But yeah, so anyway, also the general rule of thumb is that writing a novel is considered 50,000 words, which feels short. But The Great Gatsby is about 50,000 words. So that's a novel. It's normal. Yeah. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is about 50,000. And so is The Notebook, which The Notebook I've always seen in mass market bigger paperback. Form. So it feels like it should be bigger, but it's not. It's about 50,000. Yeah.
Interesting. See, I've always seen The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy also in larger print, I guess, because it's always a bigger book.
So, I mean, that's kind of the length you're technically going for, which really makes more sense to do in 30 days than 100,000 words, which is always what I have tried to do and like pseudo succeeded.
Oh my God. So I always shoot for somewhere around 75,000 words.
That makes sense. The 50,000 comes out to about 100. It comes out to about 1,667 words a day, which is slightly over. So you could even do 1,666.
If you're like me, then I have only successfully completed NaNoWrimo once. I've also only attempted it like 2 or 3 times because I'm always like, I know I'm not going to do it. But I did it once in college, but I did it like National Novel Writing Week because I
remember this.
I'm an English major. I barely passed math. And when I was calculating how many words to write a day to reach like my goal of 75,000 words by the end of the month, I somehow messed up so badly that I wrote the whole thing in 9 days. And I still to this day don't know how I could have messed up that badly. And it's like I almost followed the rules, except that, and this is where I don't know if this follows the rules or not, and I don't really care because I was going to bring this up anyways. I think part of the key to being successful in NaNoWrimo, and it might be a little bit outside the pale of the original rules, or at least the original intent of the rules, is to do like research and prep work beforehand. I didn't actually do prep work for that book, but I did a ton of research because the book relied really, really heavily on like really specific Irish folklore stuff. So for months I had been like taking notes constantly. Like whenever I was at work and I had a spare second, I would be like researching different like folk stories and comparing them and taking notes in this giant, massive notebook that I had. So I already had that going into NaNoWrimo, but even like that's a whole month, I don't think I could have done it.
I think that's within the rules.
They didn't say no prep work. And so I kind of think, so this is kind of going to be our, pseudo slapstick, survival guide for NaNoWrimo. And I think right off the bat, do your prep work in advance. Like if you need to research something, do it before November starts. If you are still brainstorming ideas, like don't sit down on November 1st and be like, what am I going to write about?
Don't do that.
Have done either some character work or some research and or like some basic structuring. before you go into November 1st.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you have to do all of that. And that can take up like a good week of your time, honestly, just trying to like get your thoughts in order. So then you've lost a whole week of what would have been writing time. So I recommend that. And then it doesn't feel quite so daunting.
Right. Also, don't start your planning on October 31st, because that is historically when I have started. And I'm like, I only need a day to do this. You need more than a day.
You need more. I would say minimum, give yourself, if you're going to be really focused, give yourself like the last week of October to prep. If you're going to like kind of not be super focused on just that, give yourself the month of October to be kind of like milling over ideas of what you might want to write about for NaNoWrimo. Maybe do some research, do the character work, maybe do plot out, the basic structure, and maybe just spend all of October just kind of ruminating on it so you're ready, because it is like a mental battleground. You have to be prepared when you go into November 1st and say that you're going to write a whole novel. So, I mean, I also do think that my rules are always like a lot more flexible than normal people's rules, because I feel like if you already had a book and you had a couple chapters of it and you finish the rest of it in the month of November, I feel like that should count as a NaNoWrimo. So, I mean, I think that that's fine too, but in that case, then you need to spend your time in October preparing yourself, whatever you need to do, or fixing plot holes, or going back and figuring out what earlier in the book got you tripped up. And then you got writer's block and fixing that. So when you hit NaNoWrimo, you're ready to just speed through the rest of it as fast as possible. So,
yes. I think a big piece of NaNoWrimo is that it's just a mental battle.
It is.
Because if you are not 100% committed, you will probably not finish, because you'll get to like day 10, you'll be like, oh, I guess I can skip a day, and then you'll never come back to it.
And you have to really prepare yourself for the FOMO, because even if you're deeply introverted, you're going to like want to go grab food or go grab a coffee, or you're just going to want to like get up and walk around and procrastinate, or somebody inevitably is going to be doing the one thing that you think is so fun, but you have to actually focus on your writing. So you just have to be prepared and warn the people around you, all your friends, like November 1st through the end of November, you are not available.
Yeah.
Or you can say you're not available between the hours of this and that. Maybe you don't write very well after a certain time or before a certain time. So you just tell everyone in your life, I'm only available for this chunk of time or that chunk of time, and do not even speak to me otherwise, because I will not be available. And no, I do not want to hear about your plans, and I don't want to see the pictures, because this is a mental battle, and I am trying to steel myself against the FOMO, because that's what throws me every time that I've tried NaNoWrimo or even thought about doing NaNoWrimo, is I'm like, I know I'm not gonna be able to handle the FOMO. And I am extremely introverted and isolated by choice, and I still get it. So if I have a problem with it, you'll have a problem with it.
Right. Yeah, it is tough. I guess so one of my tips is, I don't know how many of you are like me out there, but I would recommend, technically the average is about 1,600 words a day. I would try to do more than that the first week, because the first, I don't know, 15,000 words are probably going to be the easiest. And that's probably kind of where you're going to come up you're going to come up on something that's going to block you. Either writer's block in the sense of, I am already exhausted from spending all this time on it, or an actual plot thing you didn't think through. Give yourself time to have a day or two in there where you're not writing and still aren't going to get super far behind. Because I feel just way better when I am ahead of the game, as opposed to on par or trying to catch up. And so if you know that you're that kind of person, it's very feasible to do 2,500 words in one day when you're working on the beginning of a book that's going to come more easily to you. And then you're going to hit that roadblock sooner, but then you're also going to have the time to get past it and to brainstorm and do any research you need to do. Also, it is okay if you're in the middle of NaNoWrimo, if there is a small detail that doesn't really matter, to just put a note and then move on. You don't have to do the research right then and there. Normally, I will go down the rabbit hole as I write, but don't do that during Nano unless you have gotten yourself so far ahead that you can manage a day lost. So.
Nano is very much where we go. Editing that's for editing author. Like that's for editing Ash. That is not for writing Ash, because we are putting that that is the next month problem, because you won't finish NaNoWrimo. And I think a good strategy for like timing it out, and then this also gives you a little bit of time, is to aim for a chapter and 2 lines a day. And the reason I say that is because a chapter, if you did a chapter a day for the whole month, that'd be like 30 chapters, right? But not every book needs 30 chapters. But so it basically allows you to keep the flow going. So you kind of finish like the arc of a chapter in one sitting or in one day, which kind of helps, maintain the flow. And then you start with the first 2 lines of the next chapter. So when you sit back down to write, it's not just a big blank, like chapter 2 staring at you and nothing there. So you kind of have left off. Plus it kind of like helps the flow be continuous between the chapters. I think it's really great. I think it's an effective way to do it. And I think it's not overwhelming. And then like Karissa said, if you need to take a break or two, guess what? If you keep to that schedule, you'll be able to, because a lot of books do not need a whole 30 chapters in them. So maybe your book has like 20 chapters, 22, 25 chapters, and you won't need all of the days. So, I mean, I think that's a good way to shoot for it.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm going to clear my throat. Wait until you're done talking.
How dare you?
Let's see. Oh, okay. So my next point is kind of, I guess, random. I don't know. So apparently some people criticize Nano because it's like insulting to the craft to say that you can write a whole book in 30 days. Is it insulting? No, it's not. And this is kind of for someone that really cares about craft. Okay.
No,
it's not insulting because
why would that be insulting?
I know what you have at the end of the month is not a publishable book. And it's important to go into it understanding that. You don't then go and query agents. You don't then start looking into self-publishing. Do not do that. Because it is a first draft. You don't have a completed manuscript at the end. You have a first draft. That is the goal. I don't know that anyone is capable of writing and editing and producing a book in 30 days. I do think that would be kind of sketchy, if not insulting.
Because we have that whole thing about that you say a lot too, where you need to give a book space before you go back to edit it. I don't think that you could give it enough space in the span of a month. Yeah.
Even if you could write it in a week, I still don't think getting 2 weeks in between there is going to be enough. So you can't do in 30 days, and that's not the goal. So don't you're just getting a rough draft so that you have something to work on in December and, throughout next year. Really, if you're in school or if you have a kind of job that functions in this way, you can use like winter break through December and January to work on editing. I still don't think that's enough time in and of itself, but it's giving you a good start so that when you go into the holidays, maybe you can work on it when you have more time, or even just next year, you have something to start with that's not a blank page. And so don't go into it thinking that you're going to finish a polished book. You can, if you finish early, you can start editing it, but you're still not going to be able to finish it entirely. So just take that stress off right now.
It's more like National First Draft Writing Month than actual like novel writing. The whole idea is that you have a beginning and a middle and an end by the end of the month. Like that's the basic concept. That's why I feel like regardless of all the rules, if you have the beginning, the end, the beginning, the middle, the end of a novel, and you wrote the majority of it during November, I feel like that counts as NaNoWrimo. I might be a little weird on the rules, but I think it counts. And regardless, then you have a whole book. So, I mean, or at least what you need for the whole book, the meat of a whole book. So,
that's really the goal. You don't really get a prize except for, yay, I have a completed first draft. So if you cheat, no one cares. It's not going to do anything.
This is the thing about rules like this that I'm like, who's going to know? And who's going to care? I'm not going to lose anything. There's absolutely no consequences. So you guys can kind of do what you want to do. I just think largely the key to success is in mental preparation and also practical preparation the month before and preparing your story idea and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. Are you going to do NaNoWrimo this year?
Yeah, I think I'm going to try to do the
Lord that's right. You said one. Yeah.
But I also have other ideas that I'm kind of batting around. So are you going to do it? Are you going to try?
I have no idea. Every single year I'm in October and I'm sitting here going, am I going to do NaNoWrimo? I don't know. So I have enough books that are in the works, and that's probably, I would grab one of those. And by in the works, I do mean like first or like 1 or 2 chapters, or I have like the vague like outline of it written down. So I will decide by November 1st, which is not what I'm advising you guys to do. But I also am not going to be hard on myself if I don't end up doing it. I'm doing a lot of things. So I rarely feel guilty for not adding something extra to my plate for which there is no consequence if I don't do it.
So it can be good to kind of gauge how you feel on November 1st, even November 2nd, and say, do I really feel like I can do this?
Or do I really
actually
have
reasonable? Yeah. And if the answer is no, then that's fine.
Then that's fine. Yeah. If you're someone who's going to be really hard on yourself if you don't finish NaNoWrimo, and you know that your time is already limited, maybe just put it off till next year.
Mm-hmm.
Or just like be really mentally disciplined with yourself and emotionally disciplined, and just know that like it is not a reflection on your skill as a writer or your time management as a person if you are simply too busy or not in a good headspace to write a whole novel in a month. It is challenging. It is difficult. I did it once. Karissa has, I would consider, basically done it once. It's hard to do. And so don't feel bad if you can't do it or are just not in a good place to do it, or you know you can do it, but it would physically destroy you. Also, there's a lot of holidays in November. So if you have like vacation planned or family planned, that means so much more than your book. I promise you, your story is going to be there. Like, don't stress yourself out. If you want to extend your own personal National Novel Writing Month and you want it to go into December, do it. I still think it counts. The idea is completing a book in a short amount of time. I mean, if that's it. So I still think it's equally impressive if you do that. It doesn't have to be. You could turn any month into National Novel Writing Month for yourself. It doesn't matter. I guess it would just be Personal Novel Writing Month. But it's not a reflection on your skill if you can or can't do NaNoWrimo. Just, I would say like do your prep work, play around with your ideas. November 1st, look at your schedule for the month and then gauge your like mental and emotional temperature, because this is something that the writers, I have seen them like destroy themselves like stress wise over. And it is not supposed to be that. It is supposed to be fun. It's not a competition. Nobody wins, nobody loses. It's just a challenge if you have the time and the energy and an idea to see if you can do it. And also, even if you can't, even if you have the time and you have the idea and you can't just write a whole novel in a month, that's okay. Maybe that's not your process. Like that's
right.
It's just something that's fun. It's not supposed to be like, well, if you were really a good writer, then you could finish this whole book in a month. That's not true. That's not, all.
No. I mean, really, when you think about it, most books published are not NaNoWrimo books. So although did you know this? The Night Circus was a NaNoWrimo book.
Yes, because over on our sister podcast, That Pretentious Book Club, we did The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. And so weirdly in her bio, we were like, oh my goodness, she did this as a NaNoWrimo. But we're at the end of season 4 of doing a book every single week over there. And we have never hit another book that was NaNoWrimo. And that is the tiny little handful of books of the sample size that we read from. So it's not common. And if you end up with a book at NaNoWrimo that's not like publish worthy or even at its best publishable, that's okay too, because anything that you do that's writing or imagination or creativity contributes to your growing your skill as a writer. So it doesn't have to be it could be something you go, will this ever get published? But you just want to get your story out, go for it. Like it's just supposed to be for fun. It's not supposed to be like this big stressful challenge. It's kind of just a game.
Yeah, true. Especially because other people are doing it. I think I don't want to like discourage people that do want to do nano, because it is really fun. And when you treat it right, it is really useful, and you can use it as a way to kind of jumpstart your career, to kind of start thinking about it really seriously, or to like what I would be doing at this point is to have another book to add to kind of my potential books to query and get out there, which is really nice to have multiple ones to split your focus between for a lot of reasons. But just keep in mind that you have to know what you want to get out of it. And I also think it's important not to put your own expectations onto other people or take their expectations and put them onto yourself. So like, let's talk about the social media aspect.
Oh God.
I think you need to know what kind of a person you are. And you know that better than I do, obviously. I know what kind of person I am, but you need to gauge, can you handle people constantly talking about NaNoWrimo? Is that going to help you? Is that going to encourage you? Is it going to annoy the crap out of you and make you want to quit?
It just annoys me and makes me want to quit, because I also don't like to be part of a trend. And so then I have to. And I don't like a lot of people get weirdly competitive about NaNoWrimo. So if you're one of those people, maybe maybe try and take a break from social media for the month. Or just really
my
stay
big
away
problem,
from like Bookstagram and book talk.
Because my big problem is that I don't think, generally speaking, I don't think I'm a competitive person, but I think I am deep down, because if I feel like I'm capable of winning, I like to win. I just don't feel capable of winning very often. But the one thing that I do think I'm good at is writing. And so when I see other people hitting their word count goals or exceeding them, and I'm not, I get really upset about it. Not like in a, I don't know. It's kind of a jealousy thing. It's not like it's not that I want them to be brought down, but now my mental state is like, oh, why am I not doing this well? Like, this sucks. I need to get ahead. I need to do something better. Yeah. And I just don't like the competitive edge to that. I don't even like it normally when people talk about word counts, even though there's nothing wrong with it. I just know that that's not good for me to look at. So if I see a word count thing, I usually scroll past it. And you just have to get into that mindset where if you are going to stay on social media, kind of learn how to pick out what the indicators are that someone's about to talk about NaNoWrimo, and then just scroll past before you really see a lot about it.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, because I don't think it makes you a bad writer or a bad person to just not be able to handle certain types of competition or comparisons, because a lot of writing is already so difficult to not compare yourself to other people.
Yeah.
So everyone doing the same thing at the same time with word count goals and numbers and quantifiable things can be really hard to keep that competitiveness out.
Hang on.
Are you okay?
Wait. Javi's pouring me some mead right now. Thank you, my love.
Oh, nice.
Ha ha ha.
I have water.
But yeah, no, I was going to say, I think weirdly, NaNoWrimo kind of reminds me of freediving in this very strange way, where like freediving it's kind of all about like mastering your own fear and knowing your limits and what you're capable of. And the appeal for it is, I mean, some people do it competitively, but really it's more like just challenging yourself to see how far
an internal challenge.
Yeah, it's not even like seeing yourself how far you can push yourself, because if you do that at freediving, you could literally die. It's to see what your limits are and see if there's a way for you to safely stretch your limits and to see what you're capable of. Like, yeah, exactly. Like you said. So that's really what NaNoWrimo is for. If you're somebody who like likes to challenge themselves, but is not outwardly competitive, NaNoWrimo might be less stressful and more fulfilling for you. Right. I don't find NaNoWrimo stressful. I just, at the risk of sounding arrogant, I feel like I just know my limits a little bit. And so I'm like, I'm not going to put effort into it if I know I'm not going to do it to begin with.
Right.
But I think that it's a great exercise in at least learning what your limits are with writing if you don't know. If you're just like, hey, I wonder if I can, well, give it a shot. Worst case scenario, you don't write a whole novel in a month, and then you'll be like everybody else and many other successful writers who have never written a novel in a month. Like, it's not a big deal.
You'll just feel like everyone else at that point. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. It's just cool to see if you can do it, if you have it in you, if you can like master the like distracted part of your brain and like really focus and set aside time. But if you don't, it doesn't mean that you're just like an always distracted person. It could mean you're the only one who knows yourself well enough to know. It could also just mean that that's not your process. So yeah, it's just fun. Yeah, I think not taking it or yourself too seriously, but seriously enough. That's the thing too. It's knowing like to push yourself, but not push yourself too far. Like, it's kind of this balance you have to strike. And honestly, it could take a few years of trying NaNoWrimo to figure out what it takes to make you successful.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. There are a lot of different kinds of people that do nano, and you just need to know which one you are. Are you a neophyte? Are you new to this? Are you learning? Then don't be really hard on yourself to the point where you feel like, to like where you feel like a failure if you don't finish it. You're not a failure, you're just getting started. Are you okay?
This mead that my husband just poured me is so sweet.
Ooh, nice.
I'm gonna go back to my red wine. I'm sorry, continue.
You're good. So yeah, neophytes or new people are going to have different goals than maybe someone like me, just for an example, because I have written a lot of stuff before. And I do feel like it's kind of a career move. It's the kind of thing that I want to approach with commitment like you would a career. And that's also fine. You just need to know that that's what you're going into it trying to do. And if you're doing it for fun, don't give yourself goals that the people doing it as a career are trying to meet. And if you're doing it as a career, I think that's when it's best to just stay away from social media, because that's when the comparisons are going to come in. And you're also scrolling social media is just a time suck. So you might want to stay off of it in general. And so you just kind of have to know, what are you expecting to get out of this reasonably, like given all the holidays and your time restraints and all of that. What do you want to get out of it? What can you reasonably get out of it? And then how can you best set yourself up to succeed at that?
I agree. And if you want like an in-between of, if you're somebody who just like doesn't want to do anything they can't do anything with, that makes sense. Like, you're like, everything has to have a practical purpose. I get that. First of all, I do think that anything in this realm of creativity, like I said before, can contribute to your writing if you're intentional about it. But if you want a more tangible thing, but you know it's not going to be self-publishable, maybe this is a story you're going to put up on Wattpad just for fun, just to like see what people's reaction to your voice is. I would still recommend maybe giving it a few weeks after you finished it and then doing an edit before you do that. But regardless, like it doesn't have to be a story that you finish writing and just stick away in a drawer and you never pull out or use again for anything. You can even publish under a different name if you don't want to edit it, and just put it up on Wattpad and just see if anyone likes it, or just to know for yourself that it's out there, that you did something, you made something, and now it's out there for other people to enjoy, because there's something really satisfying about that. Or what you could do, I don't know, but I'm sure people have done this before. I don't know anyone who's done it personally, but a lot of people who publish on Wattpad will publish like a chapter at a time. So you could do that. You could literally publish as you're writing on Wattpad for the whole month, if that would be motivating for you. Sometimes knowing that people are reading or knowing that it's visible can be more motivating. So I think you also need to know what is it that's motivating you to do NaNoWriMo, and then do whatever you can, set yourself up to satisfy that motivation in some way or other, and it'll keep you moving. I think the thing is, I don't really understand what motivates me for NaNoWriMo beyond the just challenging myself. But the fact that I wrote that book in 9 days on accident is already satisfied, like, okay, I know what I'm capable of. And so I'm like, I kind of already know. And so now I'm having a really hard time motivating.
Like 30 days is too much now. It's like not even an achievement.
Well, I'm like, I know my limits. It's like, if I can hold my breath for like, 2 minutes and 45 seconds, like how much of an achievement is it for me to hold my breath for like a minute and 30 seconds? Like nothing, which is not even correct, because it's a skill that you can lose. I guess maybe I should start thinking of it like that. Because if you don't do like breathing exercises regularly and stay in shape to free dive, then your breath hold time can drop drastically. So it's very possible that I could not write a book in 9 days like I did before. So maybe if you're someone like me, NaNoWriMo is just a time to brush off your skills and make sure that you are still challenging yourself, that you're not just sitting on your laurels, or, just assuming that you kind of mastered like the speed writing thing. Right. I don't know.
Yeah. I think another thing that can be hard if you are not planning to do NaNoWriMo, I think sometimes it's hard to then write anything during November, because everyone's talking about it and you're like, you're missing out and you're not getting the support, but you're also not in a vacuum. So it can be really hard. I feel like I'm either super productive in November or not productive at all.
Oh, I get bitter and unproductive. I'm like, stop telling me about these amazing books that you're writing in 30 days. I don't want to hear it. I'm not going to write anything.
I want to know. So also, even if you don't plan to do NaNoWriMo and you're still listening, still stay off of social media, potentially, at least off of the Nano side.
November is one of the most toxic months to be on social media as a writer. That is just fair warning. Whether you plan to do NaNoWriMo or not, it is one of the most toxic months, and not on purpose. I think everyone is just excited.
It's a good intention, and it works for a lot of people. A lot of people successfully write books that they then either publish or they just have for themselves because of this. So
but on social media, people can get competitive and toxic and judgy, and also very kind of like braggy, and they're not doing that because they're trying to be braggy. Most of the time they're just excited, but it can make you feel so bad for not doing NaNoWriMo, like you're less of a writer, which is not true. So I mean, it's not a bad idea to avoid social media regardless in November if you're a writer.
I'd recommend that. I mean, it's weird because if you're like us, like me at least, I have to be, because we have the podcast, so I still have to like post things, and that's fine. But how much extra time am I going to spend on it? Hopefully not as much. So we'll see.
Very, very, very true. This is my problem, is when I post stuff on TikTok or the TPBC's Instagram, that's when I get distracted and I start scrolling and scrolling. I'm like, what was I doing? I came here to like post something for the pod, and now I'm lost in like the depths of the internet. So, or I'm over here about to like buy some like weird, like you'll never have to shave your legs again super tool. And I'm like, how did I end up here? So
why am I here?
limiting screen time too in November. So not just social media, but if you're someone who likes TV or movies, and most of us are, you are going to have to limit that probably significantly to reach your goal for NaNoWriMo. That's just true, because it eats up, the average, TV show is like 40-ish minutes long, right? And that's not a movie, and that's assuming you just watch one episode, which is very rare for me to do.
Yeah.
I
don't think I've done that in years.
I know, exactly. So maybe that's something where you set aside some time to watch TV or something for that time of day that you know you're not productive. But that's really knowing your skills. Like I probably still couldn't do that because I will just keep watching and keep watching and keep watching. So
right. You could make it a reward.
Yeah.
You could say, if I write my word count, then I can watch a couple episodes. But again, if you can stop.
Idea. Yeah. So I think you just need to like maybe in addition to doing your prep work for the book, so you know what you're getting into and where to take your story starting November 1st, maybe in October is also a good idea to make the list of the time suckers that kind of distract you. And it's not that they're bad things. It's just the things that take up your time the most. Even if it's like cooking, cleaning, whatever it is. Make a list of all of it and see if there's anything you can mark off for the month of November, or if there's a way you can limit the time you spend. It sounds weird, but because I am very busy, because I self-impose, a million things on myself to do. The reason that I was able to finish editing my book this last week was because I decided I'm going to let the house go for a week. I'm not going to clean it this weekend. Am I living in filth? Yes. Was that what I had to do to get my writing done? Because that was the one thing that I could justify quote unquote wasting my time. The house needed to be clean, but it was the one thing that kept pulling me away from writing. And now I have to clean my whole house tomorrow. Like I said, and it's going to be hard because I haven't cleaned it for like a whole week. But for me, like, I know that that's something that I will turn to distract myself from things, sometimes on purpose, sometimes not, just because it needs to get done. And so my sacrifice was living in filth and trying just not to look at the dirty dishes in the sink. So
I like that you think 1 week is putting you in filth. I've definitely gone that long before. But
Justin, I put 2 loads of laundry through today and I'm feeling very satisfied, but now they're about to be in my room and I'm like, now I have to fold them. But I am caught up on my writing and everything. So like I did all that and I sent some queries. So now I can clean my house again. But as dumb as that sounds, even if you're like, I have no time, I believe you. I promise. I hate when people say you have time, you're just not prioritizing it. Sometimes that's not true. Okay.
Right.
But sometimes you might have to sacrifice or something to do something like NaNoWrimo. You might have to make a sacrifice, like living in a dirty house, eating microwave meals, whatever it is that's taking your time. And it's not that those are bad things. Cooking for yourself, cleaning, very important, healthy habits. But if for a month you need to take a step back from those, and just so you can finish your novel, then just know that that's what you're going to have to do, or at least do it in part. Like maybe instead of cooking every day, you cook every other day. Instead of cleaning, 3 times a week, maybe you clean once a week, like whatever it is that's going to have to, that you're going to have to do to clear up your schedule enough to finish NaNoWrimo. I think that just knowing those things, writing them down in advance. And I have this ever changing list where I literally do this. I write down, and it's literally because I have no time to write usually, NaNoWrimo aside. I'll write down a list of literally everything that I do in like the average week, and then all of the extra things. And I will go through and I will try to cross off things that I can eliminate. Often there's nothing I can eliminate. They are all necessities, but I'll try and like delegate some of them to other people, or be like, okay, I'm just gonna like clean one room instead of like cleaning everything. And so it's just finding ways to like squish a little more space into your schedule when you're like trying to get in the zone.
Yeah. You could even, as part of October, you could meal prep or do stuff like that in some way.
That's a good idea. Yeah. That's a very good idea.
You can't really get a heads up on cleaning and some other things, but the things you can, like cooking, you can cook stuff in advance and then just have it microwavable for you.
Absolutely. Or maybe you decide that you're going to rewear your clothes a little more often in November. I do your laundry
October 31st, and then you might be able to go a whole month.
You'll probably go a lot longer. Yeah. And like, just like, wear those clothes that tend to stay clean longer, like jeans. You can rewear jeans a bunch of times. Wash all your jeans the end of October. You should be good on jeans for most of the month. Exactly. Not a bad idea. Ask that person who lives in your household who doesn't do that many chores, or even who does but has a little more time than you. Hey, this month, could you help me out extra? I really want to do NaNoWrimo. It's important to me that I know that I've given it my best shot that I can. And that means I need more help from you this month in XYZ ways. Is it a little bit uncomfortable? Yeah, but that's the sacrifice you make to try and give yourself the best shot. So NaNoWrimo is largely a sacrifice in itself. You sacrifice time with friends, you sacrifice TV, you sacrifice social media time, you sacrifice, cooking, cleaning, whatever else it is that takes up your time. It is. I think that that's the thing that keeps me from NaNoWrimo the most, is that if I didn't have to give anything up to do it, I'd give it a shot every year. I don't know if I'd succeed, but I might just give it a shot. I often don't, because I don't have things that I'm willing to give up. But NaNoWrimo is also kind of like writer's self-sacrifice month. Like, what can you give up? It's
Yeah.
like,
what can you live
Lent?
without?
Yes,
Try
like
it.
Lent, but for writers.
Yeah.
So you have to give one or two things up to make NaNoWrimo. At least most of us do. If you're lucky, maybe you don't, but
right.
I would say that you probably still do have to give up something like time for friends, social media, TV time, video games, whatever it is, or even reading. And that's the other thing, which is similar but a different point that you might want to keep in mind for NaNoWrimo. This is not true for everybody, but I know for a lot of writers, and I think for Karissa as well, it can be really hard to read and write at the same time. For some people, it can be hard to take in a new story of any kind, whether it's a book or a movie or a show, and write a new story at the same time. That's really difficult for me. So when I'm in the writing zone, I typically do not watch any new shows. If it weren't for That Pretentious Book Club, I would not be reading any new books. It's difficult, the fact that I do have to. It makes writing a lot harder. And I don't watch new movies while I'm writing because it just distracts me and it takes me out of the story that's in my head. So if that's something that you struggle with, then maybe NaNoWrimo, you plan, I'm not going to watch new movies, not going to watch new shows, not going to read new books, maybe not read any books at all, because I feel like that one is particularly difficult to do when you're writing.
Yeah, I know some people on TikTok have said that they can't read within their genre when they're writing, but they can read something different. So like if you're writing a YA fantasy, maybe you can read some adult romance or mystery, murder mystery, maybe some horror books to, close out October. Who knows?
Very true.
So you could try a different genre. You could even try reading a nonfiction book or reading poetry instead.
Oh, that's true.
You still want to keep up, like maybe your Goodreads goal or some kind of reading goal, you still want to make November work for you. You can just read something so different that it doesn't really feel like a story, maybe.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah,
I say if you can't give up all new media, then just give up the media that's in the same genre as your media, because otherwise it's going to be a lot more challenging to keep it. Like,
you can at least try it.
Yeah.
So that's a possibility.
What do you think are, do we have any other like specific writing advice to succeed in NaNoWrimo, or things to avoid to succeed?
I guess, well, I don't know. The thing about NaNoWrimo that I usually find hard from the mental point of view is the word count, because I don't usually write to word count, or the times I have, it typically doesn't go very well. I usually get lost because it's really easy to get to 1,600 words. It's writing useful 1,600 words. That's the problem.
Yes.
So, you could just sit there and write nonsense, but is it really going to help your story?
Yeah.
So I guess, again, depending on what kind of writer you are, if you're newer, if maybe you're just more of a chaotic writer, maybe don't worry too much about chapter divisions or things like point of view. Even point of view, past tense, present tense, don't worry about that kind of stuff. You are going to have to fix it eventually if you want other people to see it, but you can fix all that, like, quote, in post.
Yeah. That's funny.
You can, if you're switching back and forth between two characters' heads, that's fine. You don't have to fix it right away. You're getting the story down. Or if you're like, I don't know where to end this chapter, then just give yourself you don't even have to end it in a good place. You can just give yourself a divider and then move on to the next scene, and future editing version of you can figure out how to end that chapter
That's
division.
Probably a good idea, because honestly, your chapters are going to move around anyways when you edit. Because if you cut stuff or add stuff, and you should be doing both inevitably when you're editing, your chapters are going to move places. So I'm actually thinking in retrospect, like with this last book that I just rewrote, would have been so much easier if I had originally not put any chapters in at all. Use scene dividers, like put like the 3 asterisks or whatever to divide scenes, because then you can quickly find, oh, maybe this is a good spot to start a next chapter. So definitely do your scene breaks, but I actually think it might be better to not do any kind of chapter breaks at all.
Right. And it depends. Sometimes, like you said, sometimes doing it by chapter can help, because you're like, okay, now I finished the arc for this chapter and I can move on. But if that doesn't work for you, then don't worry about the chapter divisions.
No, because they're going to change anyways.
Yeah. I think it can also be helpful, like when you're prepping. I usually get stuck on stupid things when I'm writing drafts. So like if there's a new character I hadn't planned on and I don't have a name, like I have to pick a name. So you can just ahead of time give yourself a list of like 5 names. Give yourself a list of 5 scents, or fun words that you want to use, or little details to put into that book, so that if you're writing along, you're like, I don't know what to do next, you just go to that list and you pick one.
That's a good idea.
So yeah, you pick some kind of like scent or name. I don't know why those are the two that are coming to mind. It can really be anything. If you're working in a fantasy world, maybe it's a magical object. If you're working in sci-fi, maybe it's like a planet or some specific kind of fun sciencey
maybe
detail.
It's a subplot. I think one of the things that I forget to do the most that's actually really helpful, and I recommend everybody try to do in some form or other if they're going to do NaNoWrimo, like do this in October, like write out the basics, the most important parts of your main plot, or just know who and what your main plot revolves around. Like, who is it? What's the issue they're facing? What's the desired outcome? What are the risks? Know those things for your main plot. And then also you want to have a couple subplots going too.
Right.
So you want to write out that same information, who's involved, what's the issue, what's the risk, what's at stake, what do they want for the couple subplots. And then you can do the same kind of thing and be like, when you end, you know, a chapter or a section, you go, okay, I'm stuck. I don't know what comes next. What's the subplot that you haven't touched on in a little while?
Right.
Which one needs a little more attention? Go to that one. Yeah, I think I need to do that a lot more, because I think my books tend to lack subplot, and subplots are really, it's like a different episode we could do entirely, but they give a book a lot more depth. And so if you're somebody who hits writer's block a lot, you're not alone, but that might be a good way to do it and make sure you're giving your book depth. That's harder to write in afterwards.
Yeah. You could even make a list of tropes that you might want to use. And if you're feeling lost, you're like, I'm going to go find some inspiration from, you know, the classic examples or whatever it is.
Sidebar, I submitted one of my queries somewhere, and it was still like an automated like query, you know, form I had to fill out. And at the end, it was like tropes included in this book. And I was like, no way. And I had to like list out a bunch of the tropes in the book. So weird. Actually, I think that's the one who rejected me already, but I guess she didn't like my tropes, but
I guess not.
But that was weird. I'd never seen that before.
Yeah, interesting. They keep adding new little subcategories to answer.
They do. I had to enter my pronouns on something. I was like, this is new. Okay.
This is different. All right.
Unexpected, but yeah.
Yeah. So just whatever details you think you might hit a wall on, just come up with a list that you can pick from in the moment. Like, again, I know I've said this like 3 times now, but I struggle with names, because if I start writing, if I just pick a random name, that name becomes a character in my head and I can't change it later. It's really hard for me to change it. So come up with a list of names that kind of fit into your worlds. And then you can just kind of pick from the list, and you know that if you get attached to it, it's still going to work. Same with any other detail. Yeah. So just, this is all part of the, you know, Preptober stuff that you want to kind of work out.
I like that. Another good thing for Preptober is settings. So because settings can be hard, because names, settings, character descriptions, even physical attributes, those can be kind of hard, just, you know, pull out of thin air if you feel like you're already under pressure. So all that kind of stuff, even just making a list of like, what would be some interesting settings to set this type of scene in, and write them all down. And then you can just pick from them instead of just sitting there staring into the distance and just going,
where are we now?
What's going on? Where have I been? What does a setting look like? What is a setting? So
so just anything you might think, like if it's in historical fiction, that's going to contain a lot more research for sure. But you can come up with some kind of historical event.
Historical for
a list of historical events you might want to include, or historical people you want to Easter egg drop, or whatever.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
That's a cute idea.
So it's going to depend on your genre, what kind of stuff you have to come up with. I'm of course thinking mostly fantasy. So I usually come up with a list of magical objects or superpower kind of things to just pull from if I need them. But there are all kinds of categories depending on whatever your story is. So brainstorm those, and then just come up, I would say maybe 5, unless you think you're going to come up with a bunch. And it depends on how well you plan, right? Are you a planner? Do you have a really extensive outline? Then maybe you're not going to come up on this, but I have always come up on a point where I'm like, I forgot to name this character, or I don't know what this thing is doing. So
very much so.
Try to plan for that as best you can.
My planning has become as extensive as I will write a 1-page summary maximum. And it's really hard, because writing the synopsis of your book when your book is finished and you already know what happens is the most difficult part of the whole process. And I finally did it for this book, which I basically had to redo completely because the book is completely different than it was. And it's the hardest part. But if you want to do that in October, and that's what you consider your outline, because that's kind of what I do. And I just highlight the events in my summary as it goes on. And it shifts and changes, of course, as you're writing, because I'm still inherently a pantser. I mean, it's painful. It's difficult. It's going to take days of your life and years off your life, but it might be really useful if you're somebody who gets stuck a lot. So, because it always gives you a direction to move in. And I feel like it's not a bad, if you hate doing prep work, it's not a bad bare minimum to just make yourself do a synopsis. And it's painful and it sucks. But if you hate prep work, and I do hate prep work, then just making yourself bite the bullet, do the one hard thing and move on could still put you in a pretty good place for NaNoWriMo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do I have any more advice? Let me look. No. That's all
either.
I had.
I really feel like this is like a Preptober. This is the Preptober guide. Mental preparation, emotional preparation, physical preparation. You got to train. We are in training for NaNoWriMo.
We're in training mode. I mean, really, NaNoWriMo is about prep and commitment. Really, I do believe, and maybe this is just me, but you know if you are or are not committed to something. And for me, at least, if I'm committed, I am all in. But if there's even like an iota of me that's like, nah, I will fail. And so you just have to decide, is this something I can reasonably do? Am I feeling peer pressured to do this? Do I feel like I have to claim I'm a writer? Then don't do it. And it's okay. And just stay off social media and, read some books instead of writing or something.
You guys can join me over here in NaNoWrimo November, because I almost never join in, because I know. And it's not a thing about self-discipline either, because like, again, not to be arrogant, but I do think I'm extremely self-disciplined. Yeah. But I know I am not committed. I can tell when I don't have either the focus or the commitment to get NaNoWrimo done. So I'm
discipline and commitment are different.
Yeah.
And you need to know which you may or may not be lacking. If it's discipline, then work on discipline. If it's commitment, you don't have to commit. It's okay.
Exactly. Discipline is something you can work on, because even if you don't finish your book, but you spent all of National Novel Writing Month trying to be more self-disciplined, that's amazing in itself. That's really hard to do. NaNoWrimo is a great practice in self-discipline. Even if you're not really a writer, it's just a great way to practice that skill. Yeah. If your thing is commitment though, it's really hard to just make yourself be committed.
It's hard to fake. Yeah.
Really hard to fake that.
Yeah. I've never found that the fear of disappointing others is a good motivator for me, because, and this is going to sound terrible, you can lie about it.
It's true.
You can tell people you wrote a book when you didn't actually. I'm not encouraging you to do this because you shouldn't lie, but it's hard for something to be a motivation when technically no one else cares, or if they do, you can just like fib a little bit.
See,
so it's got to be you.
I sometimes take pleasure in displeasing people. So for me, it's not motivating either, because I'm like, I made him a little mad. That's kind of funny.
I'm like, I'm just gonna like skew the truth a little bit. I have not lied to you guys that I am aware of. I don't do that. I'm just saying it's the fact that it's an option makes it easier to flake. Yeah, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely, because you could just fake it. Yeah, exactly.
So it has to be coming from you, the motivation, and you can't fake that.
Yeah. I also think I fight the fact that I'm so anti-trend that it makes me like not want to do NaNoWrimo, but then I'm annoyed that everyone's talking about NaNoWrimo, and I'm like, oh, like, what do I do? Because I hate trends, but I also hate that everyone's talking about this. But if I was also doing it, I wouldn't be so annoyed by it. So it's difficult. So if you guys are like, I know I'm not doing NaNoWrimo, put in your earplugs for the whole month, okay? Like, it's going to be annoying. Everyone who's a writer is going to be talking about it, whether they're doing it or not. So just like expect it, and like maybe hide away, maybe isolate also for all of November.
Yeah.
That's a bad idea. Don't isolate.
Head in the sand.
Yeah. Head in the sand though about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I think that's all I have on NaNoWrimo.
Hopefully there were some practical tips in there. I think my meal prep idea was good. That's my best really idea possibly. Yeah.
That is I like it because it's so practical. So like easy.
Anyone can do it. It will help. It's something that it will help you get into the mindset that I am going to do this. Yeah. But it's not a waste of time if you don't, because then you just don't have to work on it later.
Exactly. And I should have said, it's not a bad idea to prepare yourself either to choose where you're going to sit down and do the bulk of your writing, and or to prepare the actual environment that you're going to sit down in. And I know it's easy to say, but there's this one spot and the sun hits just right, and I write really well right here. If it is a place where other people traffic through, it will be a distraction. I don't care how focused of a person you are. Your best bet is still going to be go somewhere where no one is going to bother you, or where there is a barrier they would have to cross to bother you. That is how I got it done when I did NaNoWrimo, and I did it incorrectly, was I shut myself in our dorm room and I shut the door, and I would put in my headphones, even though I wasn't listening to anything, because I was like, I don't want to hear the TV in our shared suite room. Like, I don't, if people want to get to me, they're going to have to
leave
come
me alone.
Through the door. And I'm not a social person. So, and I still had to do that. So highly recommend, because when you hit writer's block, and somebody walks through and is like, hey, do you want a cup of coffee? You're going to be like, yes. Oh my God, yes.
Please take me out of here.
Exactly. And then a cup of coffee becomes, a scone. The scone becomes, let's go see a movie or let's go watch a movie. And and then it becomes
a marriage, and then you're married. And then what do?
Gross, disgusting. Would you not support marriage? That would be actually a pretty adorable meet cute, but a pretty
you could then write a book about
NaNoWrimo. Yes, for your next NaNoWrimo, when you're being more successful and have to lock your husband out of the room.
Exactly.
Which is difficult because I've never done NaNoWrimo with a significant other. But considering the fact that Javi just seen me edit recently has been like, pay attention to me. Pay attention to me. I'm like, oh my, I do NaNoWrimo. I live in a tiny space. It's very hard to block people out. I think I would genuinely have to get like those dividers they put on like your elementary school desks.
Yeah, so
people can see. Yeah, exactly. So people can see that I can't see them because I can feel him looking at me. And the second that I glance at him, he's like, pay attention to me. And I'm like, bro.
Don't even make eye contact. Don't even let your eyes be visible.
Yeah, it's true. Well, I mean, if you do live in an environment where there's a lot of people and you're like, I have nowhere to be alone. I'm just saying, go to the dollar store, get a couple of those little manila folders and tape them together. Do what you got to do if you're committed. And if you're not committed, wait till next year and see if you're interested.
Yeah. Or try to write through November and just don't have the goal of finishing it. I think that's probably the hardest boat to be in. Like, how do you write 10,000 words in November? And actually, not feel like that's a failure.
That is so funny that you said that, actually, because I just realized that's totally what I do. Because I see other people write and I'm like, well, I kind of want to write. And so I write during November, but I never do NaNoWrimo. And if you stay off social media, it's not that bad. But it's about like knowing what your limits are. So like, if you view it as, I know that I'm not going to, for whatever reason, I'm not going to finish writing the whole novel this month, but I am going to be productive and I'm going to try and, do some writing this month. It's still more productive than if you hadn't done anything at all. So like, I still feel like it's a pat on the back. I mean,
that's still a gain.
It's still a gain. Exactly. Like, it's definitely not a loss still. It's not NaNoWrimo, but it's still a good thing because any time of the year where you sit down and make yourself get some writing done is a good thing. So it is, people are annoyed. That's the thing. People are going to be annoyed all November long.
It's true.
There's also people doing no shave November and they're annoying me.
Oh,
and the
gosh.
men doing
I forgot
November,
about that.
Which is annoying me. So like November is just, aside from Thanksgiving, it's just a very annoying month.
This is what I want to know. I should have looked it up when I did my little research thing, but why did they pick November? Because of all the months, the only month that is really worse than that is February or December, because other holidays in December and February, because it's short. But like, why November? There's so much in there.
Because November, I mean, I always think it's because the alliteration. I think about this a lot too. And I'm like, maybe the alliteration of November is National Novel Writing Month. I don't know.
That's true. That's probably what it was. It sounded cool.
That's my only guess. Yeah. But NaNoWrimo does not have, it should be NaNoWrimo. If they did,
it doesn't even have November in the acronym.
Exactly. So that's why I don't know. My alliteration guess is like a very soft guess. But I mean, it bothers me every year. I think about it and I'm like, why November?
It's just
the
so
alliteration is the answer that gives me comfort.
Plus, people in school are studying for finals at that point, and like starting to have holidays to leave.
It is not a convenient month to have a national novel. Like, pick the month when nothing's going on. Like, March. I mean,
your birthday's in there, but most people don't know you.
Exactly. My birthday's there, but like, I don't really do that much for it. St. Patty's Day's in there, but that's just one day. It's not like November is not only Thanksgiving, but it's also like a bunch of like pre-holiday family plans also. So I don't know.
It's a weird month, but that's what we've got. So make the best of it.
Yep. Well, do you have any writing updates for us?
Not really a writing update. I came to like an epiphany realization thing that I'll share with you guys. I've always known this, but it finally hit me on an emotional level. So there is this kind of, it's not a rule or whatever, but that the first book you write won't be a book you publish usually. And I always took comfort in this because the first 6 books I wrote were really bad and they will never see the light of day. That's where like my Harry Potter fan fiction with an Immaculate Conception thing happened. Those will never see the light.
So much.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That was another episode you guys should look back for it. I don't know. I don't remember the episode, but it was good.
It was a special. It was our 50th episode.
Oh yes. Our 50th episode special. If you guys want to hear what our original, what our first thing we ever wrote was, you guys should go listen to it. If Harry Potter Immaculate Conception didn't already sell you on it.
Exactly. That really should be enough. There's nothing better than that. But anyway, so I've always been comforted by that because I'm like, okay, well, the first 6 books I wrote were really bad and I don't plan to publish them. But then I had this other series and I was like, this is going to be my first one. And I've always had in the back of my head that like book 1 would be the first book I publish. I don't know why I clung to this so hard. I just did. And I was, I've been writing other books this year. And so I think that's been kind of easing me out of that mindset, like piece by piece. And so yesterday I was looking through just for fun, because I was kind of bored, the notes that I have on the series. This is a 9-book series. And so I have notes that I keep about it, about like cultural things I want to add or certain stylistic things I want to add to points of view and all that. And I'm like, gosh, this is still so much work. I still have a lot to do. And book 1 is pretty good, but I was even thinking about that. And I'm like, okay, wait, I think I need to change this up a little bit. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, I don't think it is feasible for me to get this done in the time period I would want to be published by. So it's now no longer even really the goal for it to be my first book, because I want them to be so good. I have this image of them in my head. And so I sent the book 1 to Kendall, right? And so on That Pretentious Book Club. And I'm like reading through parts of it and I'm like, why does this now suddenly feel terrible? And like, it was a horrible mistake to send it to her.
That's how I feel after, as soon as I sent my book to you guys, which I just sent it this week, I'm like, oh my God, this book is garbage.
It's terrible. I hate it. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, if I feel this way, it's very possible that there's nothing wrong with it. And it's just a mindset thing. But I'm like, if there are things I'm still thinking about, I want to change, maybe it's okay for me to just have this as like a Tolkien-esque lifelong project. And I will only publish them when I feel like they are really what they can be. Because I have this image in my head, they're going to be so good, but they're not there yet. And I think it's just, I don't know. I was just clinging to it so hard that this had to be like my introduction to the literary world. It doesn't have to be. I can have standalones. I can have my Lord of the Flies stuff. I can have other things that are just as good, but take less work up front so that I don't have to be worrying about querying and doing all the other stuff while I'm trying to make this good. So I wish I had come to this realization earlier, but I definitely, I feel better about it now. I feel very emotionally calm about it, which is good. And I don't know, some things take me a very short period of time that take other people a long time. This is one of the things that most people figure out very quickly that took me a long time. And I'm owning that, and it's fine.
It is a moment though that you always have to reach. Like, it wasn't until I don't even remember like what the first book, actually I do remember the first book I tried to publish. It took me so honestly, if I had not self-published it and seen how hard it bombed, I would have still been like, this has to be my first book. Like it is so hard. Like, every author reaches that point where you realize like what you thought would be your magnum opus and might still be is not going to be the first thing out. Exactly. Like, I just had an idea for about 6 months ago for a book that I think could be my magnum opus. I haven't had it till now. I've been writing for well over a decade. And I mean, wow, God, how old am I? I was like 12 when I started.
I don't even want to do the math.
No, I don't either. Well over a decade I've been writing. And I just now had the idea that I think could be my magnum opus. And it's not going to be ready probably for years. Exactly. Just like ready for like a first edit. Yes, yeah, exactly. So
I want to do it right.
Exactly. That's the thing. You want to do it right. And so you want to give every story the time it deserves. And maybe you have other ideas that don't take as much time to get the story as good as it's going to get. Like the one that I just sent off, like it actually did take a few years because it's gone through so many edits and then a full rewrite and then another edit. So it did take a while, but I don't think it's going to be my magnum opus. But I think it's gotten the time that it needs. Like, if nobody picks it up after this, that's fine. I'm moving on to another project. But it probably won't be my magnum opus that gets published first. It's probably still going to be something else that takes less time to get to its like high quality level.
Yep. So if you guys are at a point, I will say this, and this might be controversial-ish. If you're in a place where you're like, no, this first book I'm working on is really good, it's going to be my first one, you can linger in that for a while. It's okay to hold on to that hope for however long you need, 10 plus years.
The world will break you out of it if it's not true. Don't worry.
And
maybe you'll be lucky.
It's true. Maybe you'll get lucky, but if you don't, getting there yourself and finding that like peace with it is just not something you can manufacture from people telling you over and over again.
It is something you have to experience on your own. Nobody can make you see it or experience it or feel it.
Yep. So it's okay if you're in that moment, you're like, this is going to be my first book. I hope so. I hope that for you, because that would be great. But if you change your mind later, if you sit there and you realize I still want to do a lot with this, that it's just not ready yet, that's also okay.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. Yeah. The one that I think will be my magnum opus has such an expansive world, which I did tie into the book that I am querying now, but it is, and it's going to be third person and so broad. It's going to take so much work and so long. And I almost think I should have that whole series written before I query it, because it's going to be so like involved. So it's going to be a long time before that is ready, unless I get to magically become a full-time author, which would be wonderful, but is, you know.
Right. And really a lot of it is, maybe this is something I need to work on when I am a full-time author, when I don't have to be worrying about other things. So
exactly. That's why I keep putting this one off, because it takes so much concentration and so much like effort that I'm like, I just like half an hour here or there is not enough focus to like get this. It's like working on a really hard math problem. You can't just glance at it like your multiplication tables and know. Like
2 minutes here and there.
Exactly. No, you're gonna have to like sit down with it for a while and figure it out. And that's definitely where I'm at with mine right now. And I could be wrong. Maybe it won't be my magnum opus.
Right. Maybe you'll have something even better, or maybe you'll combine it with something.
I'm pretty talented, so
this is not the peak. But also just to kind of transition into yours, I don't want to steal your news or anything, but I have been editing Ash's book, hint, hint. And I've noticed, I don't know if this is new or if I just never noticed it before, but I'm really noticing like the differences between our writing styles. And so it's hard because like, of course you don't want to edit the style out of someone's book, right? So
really, it's the hardest part about it.
I have to sit there and be like, is this sentence incorrect, or is it just not the way that I would have written it? And if it's, you know, the second one, I might give a suggestion because I'm like, my brain just needs to know that I told you. But like, you don't have to take it. It's just a suggestion. And so I'm noticing, I think your writing style is very, I don't know if this is going to come across as an insult, but it's meant as a compliment.
Ooh, I'm excited.
Very, very flowery. Like you have a lot of like sensual descriptions, not sexual, sensual, like with the sight and the sounds and the hearing. That's the same one.
Yes, and it is. It's very important to me. The senses are very important to me.
You've talked about that on other episodes. And I guess I just hadn't put together, like maybe I haven't read one of your books since we talked about it, but I'm now really noticing it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she's really focused on like, you know, the environment and like the, I don't know, just like the specific smells and the tastes and all this kind of stuff. And I feel like my style is definitely more of like, I'm focused on sentence structure and like parallels and that kind of stuff. And so it's just very different. And so like both very good, but different. And so I have to be like, don't edit Ash's voice out. It's perfectly fine.
That is so funny. I know. I do the same thing when I read your stuff. I'm like, oh my God, she's doing something different than what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I don't think I used to be flowery. I just am so into like the senses. And I also know that I'm not prone to like the big, long environmental descriptions like Tolkien, despite my nickname. And so I know that my environments in the past have been somewhat lacking. And so I think like just pouring like sensual like adjectives and descriptions in has been like how I compensate for that.
Yeah.
And this book also is set in kind of like a imaginary medieval version of Ireland type kingdom. And so because it's like a book in that type of setting, it's inherently going to be a little more flowery. So it is, but also, I don't think you've read anything that I've written recently. You've read stuff that I originally wrote a long time ago and then edited again, but this was like a full rewrite. And the first draft I wrote just a few years ago. So yeah.
Also, I don't know if you did this because I haven't gotten to the end yet. I'm through the first chapter and partway through the second. Are you going to put like a pronunciation guide in it? Because Irish words, I struggle so hard. I'm like, I'm looking at the word. I'm like, I know this is not pronounced the way that I'm pronouncing it in my head because they have weird vowel things.
Text me and I will send you like a voice text telling you like how the word is pronounced. But this is the problem. It is largely inspired by Irish Gaelic, the words in this kingdom. And it's hard because like in my magnum opus or whatever, that's going to be that it's set in the same universe, but that language is more based on Italian, which comes from Latin. So that one's a lot easier to pronounce everything. This one is so hard. So Javi was reading my query letter and he's like, are they going to be able to pronounce that? And I was like, no.
And it doesn't really matter. It's just for my sanity. I'm like, how is this said?
I know. On my, literally, I have the only two things remaining on my book to-do list for this book, aside from like continuing to query, are redraw my map to make sure that my world map is as accurate as possible. And then I also have to make a pronunciation guide, because this book is not allowed to be published without a pronunciation guide.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good rule. The Don't Call the Wolf that I read, I had a pronunciation guide, and I'm learning I really like Polish. So if you have some kind of a language in your book, even if it's a real language and the words are based on it, maybe a pronunciation guide is great. Latin, maybe Latin based, you probably don't need it, because we kind of instinctually know how to say those if you speak English naturally, or as a first language.
But if you're going to bastardize it, because that's the thing too, I'm thinking, and I wonder, I might have bastardized the Italian a little bit, which, because I did that with the Irish Gaelic a little bit. Can you believe it? To make it more pronounceable, and it's still completely impronounceable. And so I think also, even if it's a real language and you modify it at all, you still need to add a pronunciation guide. So anyway, your turn now. I just wanted to make those comments before you got into your appreciate that. It's been such a long time since anyone has read anything remotely new that I've written, that I'm like just so excited to like see what anyone thinks, and all feedback is welcome. And I totally know what it's like to be editing and be like, okay, is this their voice or is this wrong?
Right, exactly.
It's so
I feel
hard.
like you'll recognize if it's a typo. So I'm like, okay, if I just get the typos, that's really what matters here. And then everything else is just a matter of if she agrees. Maybe you'll read it and you're like, ooh, that does sound better. And then maybe you'll be like, no, she missed the point. So
I'm so excited, because I haven't gotten like honest feedback on something since the last time that you edited something for me, which was probably college, which again, like I said, was something I wrote when I was like originally when I was 15, then edited again in college, and was still horrible. But I didn't know then that it was horrible. I didn't know I was capable of more. And so I'm just excited to see people's feedback. Obviously, I finished rewriting my book, and I had said that a while ago, but I also finished editing it, which I thought I wasn't going to be able to do until December. But not only did I finish editing it, my rewrite, I also got the query letter, the full synopsis, and the one-page synopsis all written. Ooh. And so I am like thrilled. So I've sent out like 20 query letters already so far, because I'm immediately like, bam, I'm going to do it. And is the book going to change a lot? Yes, but querying could be a years-long process. So I'm not just going to wait. So we'll see.
Fair enough.
Plus, by the time you give me back your feedback, it's very possible I still won't have any requests for the full manuscript. So I mean, I still have plenty of room to make whatever changes I want to make after edits. So I am querying now, and I said this before, but hot tipped, anything that you ever put in a query letter or in like one of like the query submission forms, because those are popular now, copy, paste, and save in a document. So I have like my 1-sentence pitch. I have the 4 books it's similar to. I have the, my target audience and why. Like, and so all of the weird, and like the tropes and the weird questions that they'll occasionally ask you, and like a separate whole author bio, because sometimes they ask for those too. So I'm having a great time, because the query process is just, it's not mindless, but it's so much easier than typically you go into it right after writing your query letter and your synopses, which are the hardest part of the whole thing. So sending queries just feels easy peasy.
Sure.
So
you just hit send, really.
Yeah, exactly. You just like go look at their submission guideline. Like you read the agent's profile to be like, do you actually want to publish in my genre? Yes. Then you go look at the submission guidelines and you're like, okay, they want a query letter in 5 sample pages. I got you. You email them, it's done. That's it.
Right.
It's so nice. And so I'm so excited, because I literally had just added to my to-do list. Now I can read the rest of your book that you sent me, and I can read the rest of Spoons' book, which I've been putting off because I knew that if I read y'all's before, I wouldn't finish mine. And so now I'm done with mine. And now I feel like I get to enter this rest period where I'm like, it's done. The whole thing's completed. I love completing tasks. I love check boxes. So I just have to mark off this giant check box. Yes. And I am so happy. So that is my update for you guys. And many, many thanks to my co-host, Lewis over here, and Kendall over at the That Pretentious Book Club. Because without you guys motivating me, this would have taken so much longer. It might have never happened. Which is also why I'm so grateful to this podcast, because without the podcast, I definitely wouldn't have rewritten the whole thing and gotten it all edited. Like, this definitely motivates me to keep going and keep trying.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Yay.
When I could just clean my house instead,
Yes,
like maybe those are equivalent. Not that important. Yeah. Yeah, but anyways, that's my writing update.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's like really good timing with my epiphany, because now if you send me my edits back on my book, I'm like ready now.
Yeah, you're ready. Yeah, exactly.
I'm ready to fully commit. Like I said, there's no part of me that's holding back anymore. I'm okay with this being the first book. So
it's nice. It's a point you just have to get to at some point.
Yep.
Wow, I can't read my own handwriting. I put notes all over this thing and I can't read my own handwriting. I'll figure it out later. Anyways,
Nice.
is that the last of the writing updates that we have?
Yeah, for me.
Okay, sweet. All right, well, in that case, if you guys enjoyed this episode or if you guys are planning to do NaNoWrimo this year, you guys should follow us on social media. We are the Scripturient Society. We are on Instagram. We are on TikTok. If you want motivation, you want like tips from our podcast during the week, follow Instagram. And or if you guys want to laugh at funny writer stuff, and probably we're going to have some jokes about NaNoWrimo, I feel certain based on how Karissa's humor goes on TikTok, you guys should follow the Scripturient Society on TikTok. And if you guys want to hear me bitch about Upwork, follow Ash O'Rourke Books on TikTok, because apparently that TikTok is very popular and I don't understand why. So if you guys want to explain that to me, great. If you guys want to talk about your prep work for NaNoWrimo, or you just want to talk about what you're working on, you guys can email us at contact@storysirenstudio.com. That's our production company's email. Or you can just message us on social media. We would love to hear what you guys are working on. We love to talk writing. Obviously, that's what this whole thing is. And if you guys want to support the pod, you can do that by going to storysirenstudio.com or the scripturiontsociety.com. They'll take you to the same place. We have some cool merch up there. I think we might have some fall merch coming out soon, so you guys can always support us there and learn more about the pod. If there's any topics that you guys want us to cover about writing, reading, whatever it is, you guys can do that. Again, just DM us or email us. We want to hear from you. And if you guys wouldn't mind leaving a review below and or a comment, that would be amazing. And that's all we've got for you guys. So until next week, keep writing.
And we'll see you on the next page.